Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Chris Rouland. He's the founder and CEO of Phosphorus. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Selfishly, I've been very interested in kind of the cybersecurity space for a long time now, but I've spent a bunch of time kind of recently learning more and more about it, kind of on my own time. But maybe before we get into all that stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And, as growing up, I ran a paper route, probably starting when I was about 10 years old. That was my source of income until I graduated high school.
Okay.
And that enabled me to support my hobby, which was computing and computers. And so I started off, I was lucky, I think in 1985, my mother came home with an IBM PC for her business, her home-based business. So I got a nice one to start with. And then, of course, I needed my own equipment. So that funded my my Apple IIe, my Atari ST, my series of my Hayes modems.
Nice.
And then my ultimate was my next station I bought when I was 18 for $3,200 on the student discount.
Wow.
So
that was a lot of money back then. Well, it's a lot of money now, but like that was a lot of money back then.
Oh, it was like I paid $800 car and a $3,200 computer. I'm definitely like a nerd.
Love it, man. So you went to university. What did you take and why? I could probably guess what you took, but what did you take?
Well, okay, so saying I went to university is a bit of a stretch. I went to college for a year to George Mason University.
Got you.
I actually started my senior year of high school. I'd kind of gone through, exhausted all the classes, so they let me go part-time to take some computer science classes at George Mason University.
Interesting.
And I stayed on there for about a year, and I got recruited to do cybersecurity work pretty early on in the defense and intelligence industry in the Northern Virginia area. So I dropped out of college and worked. My first job, full-time job, was actually at the State Department.
Wow.
Building and securing computer networks there, and I bounced around the defense community as well a little bit. And I was finally recruited when I was 21 to take a job up on Wall Street. So I took a job up at Lehman Brothers, and that was my first real big boy job. Coming to work at, wearing a suit, being there at 7 a.m. and really working with some of the most intelligent minds, not only in but in finance. And, it was a great place for a young person to cut their teeth, right? Because you've got no obligations, no family. All you really do is work. And so at that phase of their life, it's something I really recommend to young people if they don't want to do a startup is go work in that finance industry for 5 or 10 years, and because you get the best resources and the best exposure to whatever part of that industry you want to have access to. And so that was really developed my career. I did later in life go back to college.
Okay.
And that's an interesting and different story.
Sure.
I'm one of 3 graduates in the history of the Georgia Institute of Technology to graduate with a master's degree with no undergrad degree.
Interesting. How did you pull that off?
I took the dean of the College of Computing out to lunch in 2004 So I was in my early 30s at the time, and I said, "Look, I needed a college degree. Like,
Okay.
I can't go further. I felt like I couldn't go further in my career without a degree."
Okay.
He said, "Yeah, I kind of thought you'd ask for that." He's like, "Look, you're undergrad. Like, you basically dropped out of college. Like, we can't admit you."
Okay.
I'm like, "Hey, I don't want a bachelor's degree. I want a master's degree." And that really floored him. He's like, "What?"
Amazing.
And I want a master's degree. He's like, "Okay, like, explain this to me." I said, "Well, this guy in 1957, this guy in 1978, they both got master's degrees from Georgia Tech with no undergraduate degree. My CV shows that I've done the equivalent amount of work of a bachelor's degree in computer science. I want a master's." And so it went to the state level, to the Board of Regents, and they approved me what was called special non-degree seeking. So they basically let me into the master's program to see how I would do.
Wow.
And like the first semester, like totally knocked me on my butt, like
Really?
because I was the CTO of a $1 billion company, Internet Security Systems, and it's not like they had night classes, right? And I'm competing with a bunch of 22-year-old kids, and I had a young family, and this is my full-time job, so I basically negotiated to get an office move my office to Georgia Tech.
Wow.
So I could, I didn't have to drive back and forth to class, so I could walk to class, and that made a huge difference. And, I ended up getting straight A's, and after kind of being knocked around a little bit and shocked at first. And after a year, they saw my commitment, and faculty voted and admitted me in as into the master's program. And so I walked in 2007 when I was 35 years old with a master's degree from Georgia Tech, and around with a bunch of kids. And I subsequently joined the faculty and taught there, and it was a great experience, and I love the school for that.
Wow, that's really cool, man. So walk me through kind of all the stuff you're doing now, because from what I understand is you're doing a ton of stuff plus Phosphorous, correct?
No, I'm really focused on Phosphorus.
Okay.
So this is my third cybersecurity company I have founded, and the first one. So I left Lehman Brothers in the late '90s to join Internet Security Systems, and built a really well-known cybersecurity team there called the X-Force.
Sure.
I'm really proud of that. It's really, we sold our company to IBM. It's really the only part of that company that persists within IBM is the IBM X-Force. So I'm really proud of that achievement. And being part of the big company wasn't for me at the time. And so I kind of, founded this company literally in my basement with a couple guys, and got it funded and got it up to, it's now worth over $500 million. It's the most valuable venture-backed company in the state of Virginia.
Wow, congrats.
And that's huge. Yeah, and then, it got to a size at which it was time to bring on a real professional operator, and I worked with my board to do that.
Okay.
And I took a little time off, and besides being obsessed with cybersecurity, I'm also a ham radio operator. So I found this confluence of radio and cybersecurity called software-defined radios. And it basically, software-defined radios are like kind of building packet sniffers, but they're packet sniffers for the radio spectrum. And they allow you to suck in giant amounts of the radio spectrum. And so I'm like, okay, I got this packet sniffer for the radio spectrum. Now, what's the security application? And so we basically kind of built what was for network terms, would be called a network intrusion detection system. I formed a new company called Bastille, focused on sniffing the radio waves to look for kind of cybersecurity issues that wouldn't show up on the network. So all of the devices that would show up in an enterprise that you wouldn't see on your network. And so we found interesting things like devices that would be stuck between a keyboard and a computer that would sniff all the keystrokes and send out a GSM transmission every morning at 2 a.m.
Wow.
Right? Just weird stuff like that you could never find with any other type of tool.
Sure.
And so we got that company going and funded, and for recruiting, I did something very unique at Bastille, which was to DARPA had a challenge using these software-defined radios.
Okay.
And so and the challenge was around the military applications. Basically, the military was trying to solve a totally different problem, right? They're trying to solve this problem in Afghanistan around IEDs, because IEDs are detonated typically with a radio device, usually a phone.
Interesting.
So they got to jam all the radio signals around your convoy, but they still have to allow you to talk on the radio. So how do you do this? How do you create a protected radio bubble, but allow the people inside the bubble to talk out? It's a real hard problem.
I can imagine.
And so DARPA did what, I love what DARPA's doing now. They crowdsourced it.
Okay, interesting.
And so, and they basically put out $1 million reward.
Wow.
And so all these universities applied, and Georgia Tech, I think, got second place. So I went to the guy at Georgia Tech. I hired him. I said, okay, now go get the guy who won. I get the guy who got third place from Boeing, and fourth place, from this other university, and fifth place was, this individual kid.
Okay.
And so we hired DARPA crowdsourced the problem. They got what they wanted. I went and hired everybody that won, and that's how I built my team. And so that's deal. That's going great too. And again, got kind of up and running, up to speed. And I found this kind of confluence of what really we were solving at Bastille was this Internet of Things problem, but the wireless IoT devices.
Right.
But a lot of IoT devices are actually kind of on the network in a normal fashion. And so I'm really, I have this cybersecurity obsession. I love wireless stuff, but it really comes down to things. I love things that connect. I love these little computers that are wrapped in shiny plastic that are connected to our networks, and they're just like, they're growing like rabbits. And so that's what this is really about, is like the IoT. And one of my investors at my first startup, Endgame, a guy named Chris Darby, he's the CEO of Incutel. I remember where I was. I was standing in my office, and he said this term, Internet of Things, to me it was in like October of 2010. Like,
okay.
That's
really
seminal moment to me. I know where I was standing when he said it to me. I was like, wow, Internet of Things. That's what I want to do. Like, Internet's done. Internet of Things is new. That's what I want. That's what I want to be doing. And so my work really since 2010 has really been. I get really excited about this IoT issue, and so they're making it easier to get excited about and dovetail into my other skill sets, which is around cybersecurity, because we have billions of these devices being deployed.
Yep.
And no one really is thinking about security. It's a total afterthought. Yeah. And to put it in perspective, the first cybersecurity startup I joined with Public Internet Security Systems, the one we sold to IBM in 2006 for I think $1.6 billion.
Wow.
When that company started, there were 1 million computers on the internet, and that was a big deal. Now we're looking at by 2020, 50 billion IoT devices. So orders of notation of a bigger problem.
Sure. Well, I think just even I got a new router modem installed, I don't know, within the last year or so at my home, and the cable company had to come out and do it. And they're basically, the guy told me that the average home can have up to like 60 devices connected to that router at any given time. So I think a lot of people don't think about how many devices they just have in their own home, never mind the enterprise, right? And obviously the enterprise is everybody brings a laptop and a phone and maybe a tablet. So each person might have 3 computers connected. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And so really you kind of nailed it. Like the consumer, we call the consumer enterprise, looks like a small to medium business did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And a small to medium business now looks like an enterprise, and an enterprise looks like a carrier.
Yeah, totally. Interesting. So I'm curious then, how did you come up with the idea for Phosphorus, and what exactly is it?
So Phosphorus is our products. We've got a consumer product and an enterprise product, and the consumer product we're giving away.
Okay.
We just got it accepted into the App Store like 2 days ago.
Congrats, man.
Dinner, and I got the notification, so we're in test flight. We're giving out beta invites.
Sure.
I'll give you a link to for the show to have beta invites at the end.
Sure.
The thesis, the reason I picked the name P was for patching, because we're patching.
Okay.
So the goal, we do much more than patching, but the goal was to build a company to help secure the Internet of Things, whether it's an enterprise or a small business or consumer space. There's no product you can go out today. Like, you can go out in the enterprise and buy a half dozen products to keep your Windows computers up to date, or
sure.
In the consumer space, you can buy antivirus to protect your PCs, or even mobile device management software to secure your phones and your tablets. But there's nothing to secure everything from your Alexa to your Philips light bulb, and there's a real simple reason for that, because it's near impossible to run software on those things.
Yep.
And so, whereas with, you can install McAfee or Symantec or pick your favorite AD for your PC, you can't run and install software ubiquitously across the IoT. So IoT security is hard, and you have to think about it like a hacker, because it's got to be agentless.
Yeah.
So we have to provide the same functionality that cybersecurity software does for PCs or phones, but we have to do it without running any software on the endpoint. And so that's a hard challenge, and that's where we've got a bunch of patents around doing agentless software updates to endpoint devices.
Interesting. Yeah, I think what you guys are doing makes a lot of sense. And I was playing with the Android version last night, and actually this morning. The thing that's interesting to me about it is how simple it is to use, right? Because like I mentioned to you earlier, I've been spending some time kind of in Kali Linux playing with some of the nerd tools, either the GUIs or the command lines, to do basically what you guys do with just letting me hit a button and basically saying refresh my network, right? Where you would potentially need to learn a bunch of these tools, constantly be running them. They're constantly changing. But you basically just handle that for me in a really, really simple GUI that anybody can use. Is that fair to say?
That was our goal. So you're some of the earliest user feedback I'm getting. So that's great to hear that you found it easy to use. And the metaphor I use is, that I have one slide that describes the company. It's basically we're the update all button for the IoT.
Interesting.
And update all is now like, it's a verb. It's vernacular. My mother-in-law knows what update all means, because 5 or 10 years ago, civilians and consumers know that they had to update software, or maybe they did. But today, everybody, if they ever go to their settings button, they're going to see they have a bunch of updates.
Yeah.
But there is no update all button for IoT, and that's what I've invented with Phosphorus, and that's what I want to be. I want to be the update all for the IoT.
Sure. So just for people to really get what happens, do you want to kind of explain, I launch the app, then what happens and what do I do?
Sure. So what happens is you launch the app either for iOS or for Android. And what our product does is it does a very lightweight scan of the network to see what's out there. And we take some information. No, there's no PII or personal information gathered, right, but information about what the devices look like. And then we use machine learning in the cloud to actually accurately identify those devices. And then we can match them up with information we grab from banners and other things to determine the version of software or firmware they're running. And if they're out of date, we also do what's called a default credential check. So we'll tell you if you haven't changed the password for something.
Good.
You should go ahead and do that, because a lot of people don't change the passwords for things, and that's why we've got that's really the number one problem for IoT security today, and the easiest to fix is is changing default credentials. And so we're allowing people to do that. And then one feature you'll see in our application shortly is, if you'd like to store that in the credential manager of choice that you have for your mobile device will allow you to do that. So you can they do a pretty good job, cryptographically securing those passwords. And if you're willing to store your bank account password in the chain, certainly we think it's good enough for your IoT devices. And it's definitely better than whatever it came with. And the problem is so bad that the state of California recently signed into law legislation that in 2019, IoT devices cannot have a default password. The password has to be unique to the default device.
Yeah.
The password has to be unique to the device, and it has to be changed upon installation.
Interesting.
Now, I'm not a big fan of legislation, but the fact that California thought it was so bad they had to make a law for it, to me, indicates that the problem is bad enough that there's probably room for a couple software companies to solve it automatically for you too.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. So walk me through the process. It gives me a list of all the devices I have connected to the network, and it tells me very clear if it's secure or, alerts found, right? Obviously, I don't need to do anything if the device is secure. I can get more information about the device, and you actually provide quite a bit of information. I'm actually just got on the app right now. But what happens when your app finds an alert? How do I actually go about viewing that alert and actually fixing that device to make it secure?
So there are two types of alerts that you'll be seeing today. One would be out-of-date software.
Okay.
And one would be default credentials.
Got you.
So for the default credentials, you'll need to log into that device with your computer today and change the username and password. And down the road shortly, probably by the time we're generally available, we'll allow you to use the app to change that to whatever you'd like to, and then store it into your iOS or Android keychains.
Got you.
The harder thing we do is we'll actually, if you have a device that says out-of-date software,
yeah,
you can click on that and there'll be a button that says Auto Magic Update. And if you click on that, we store the latest firmware for those devices with a cryptographic checksum in our CDN or in the cloud. Right. And your mobile device will pull that firmware update from us and apply it to that device.
Interesting.
And if necessary, reboot that device, and it will update it, and then it will no longer show up as red. There's no more security issues. Some products are complicated in that there's a specific path. So you can't just update to the latest. You might have to do 3 updates before you can be at the latest version. So we'll handle all those updates for you.
Interesting. So that's a lot of work on your guys' end to make it as simple as you guys have made it so far, correct?
It is a lot of work, and to do so without the advantage of having software running on the target.
Yeah.
Is that's the hard part, and that's where the secret sauce is.
Okay, interesting. So I'm curious then to know, how are you guys going to move this into business enterprise side of things?
Sure. So the kind of, I might date myself, but if we call the iOS and Android versions of Phosphorus the Pocket Edition, if you will,
sure.
The Enterprise Edition is much different.
Okay.
It's not possible for an iPhone or a Galaxy to scan Class B network, right?
Sure.
We can't scan 2 to the 16th devices. It's just too big.
Right.
And honestly, those networks get scanned all the time anyway by the security teams. So what we do is we listen passively to network traffic and can observe IoT devices passively. We don't want to be another scanner on the network.
Right.
So we can find those devices, one, by passively listening to network traffic, and 2 is by integrating with the popular scanners out there today. So the market leaders are companies like Tenable and Qualys. There's a few others out there as well. Rapid7's a good one. So between those 3, I think it's probably 80% of the market for vulnerability scanning. So we can use their APIs. What those products do is they constantly scan the network for new devices
Got you.
and vulnerabilities, and they generate kind of a phone book report, if you will. And my thesis is if you're building a cybersecurity product today, you don't want to create any more work, right? You want to make work go away. So I want to make the IoT chapter of that phone book diminish. And the way to diminish that is to remediate the problems, not just alert people to them. So by remediating, we're fixing the problems, and we're fixing those with software updates. And our early enterprise adopters, I'm happy to say, are actually willing to use our product to update those devices. And that was probably my biggest risk at the startup was will they actually hit the update button? Right?
Sure.
And the answer is yes, they will. And so that was a big risk for me is, okay, I'm going to give these guys the ability to update the software, but will they actually do it? And the answer is yes, they will.
Well, but I think part of the reason they're doing that is because you've had such a long history in this space, right? As a good guy in the space.
I would hope so. You know, I do have a network and a long history with a lot of people in industry and customers that come up. They've come up through their careers. I've come up through my careers, and also, you know, working on Wall Street in the 90s means that a lot of my buddies are still there. So I do know a lot of people, and I've been around the space for quite a long time, and so that I think does give you some credibility versus, you know, using something from someone unknown or without a history. And people are cautious as to what they'll put on their network. That's for sure.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Thanks for listening to Building the Future. This show is heard by more than 1 million people monthly in over 15 markets worldwide, including Silicon Valley. Kevin Horick's guests are leading business owners, successful entrepreneurs, and merchandisers worldwide. Now, your brand has an opportunity to tap into this dedicated and active group of business people who are looking for places to invest and the right opportunities to support. Find out how you can get involved at buildingthefutureshow.com.
I'm curious, though, to maybe dive a little bit deeper into the actual company itself. How did you guys actually get these first few versions built? Did you raise some money? Did you self-fund? Walk us through that kind of journey.
Yeah, we raised a little bit, you know, so
Okay.
funding has changed. Plus, funding has changed.
Okay.
My first startup, it was all about having the biggest Series A.
Right.
And I honestly think that's an error some entrepreneurs make first-time guys out. Like, bigger is better. And it's not necessarily the case because no matter if you raise, I think I raised something like $35 million from my Series A. It was a ginormous Series A. It was the biggest Series A, I think, in the history of the Southeast in tech.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, that's great. I'm like, but you know what? The money, it doesn't matter if you raise $5 million or $25 million. The money gets spent.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so I would encourage other entrepreneurs to raise kind of what they need, not necessarily what they can in the early stages. Certainly once you get some good investors on board, they're not going to leave you hanging when you need money or you get to that next round, assuming you're doing what you need to do.
Sure.
And so the trend today is, I think, to raise larger seed rounds and then wait till you've got some revenue and customer validation under your belt before you go and use that one pitch bullet at the over on Sand Hill Road. And so, you know, we've raised capital and we're, you know, wrapping up our seed round before we do a Series A. So we're operating on seed capital, and when we've had gaps in seed capital, I've self-funded or bootstrapped the company.
Gotcha.
And so we got probably a total of 10 employees, mostly engineers, very low burn rate, very lean.
Sure.
And, you know, the goal is, you know, let's take customer feedback along the way, because we do have this long history, and getting that customer feedback, yes, I'll do this, no, I don't want that, has allowed us to dial in. So we can now take something to our early enterprise beta customers and say, you know, okay, let's install it, let's run it, and get some feedback, and then as we iterate, we'll come back next year with a finalized product, and we have something we can actually sell.
Interesting. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, though, to get your thoughts on why this is so important. I don't, like we kind of talked about before, I don't really want to just like try to scare people, but I also want to get them thinking about why this is so important. So how do you kind of explain it to people that maybe don't understand or don't think it's really something they should care about?
Yeah, so a common misconception is, who wants to hack into my refrigerator and why should I care?
Yeah,
Nobody wants to hack into your refrigerator.
sure.
They want to hack into your refrigerator to execute what's called a pivot.
Yeah.
And a pivot allows them to get onto your PC.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're on their PC, then they can steal your credentials to your bank account, your Bitcoin wallet, or what have you. So the IoT is the soft underbelly of the network today because people aren't patching it. They're not even setting passwords on things, and they're definitely not securing it. And it becomes the easiest way for a bad guy to break into a network. And so we saw in the last 2 weeks, we saw 2 new IoT botnets, one of them actually coming out of Tor, which is very sophisticated. So literally a botnet coming out of the dark web to attack the IoT. It's very sophisticated. And historically, we've seen IoT botnets kind of do annoying things or serious damage. So the Mirai botnet was kind of the first big IoT botnet, and the Mirai botnet is the botnet that took down Twitter for a day.
Wow.
That's pretty serious.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you can take out Twitter, one of the biggest premises on the internet, that's a powerful IoT botnet. But again, it was a denial of service. They were down for a day, caused some damage. They scrambled. It was dealt with. Another common use of botnets today is in mining of cryptocurrency.
Sure.
And that's annoying. So you go and reboot it and they're off there. But now we're starting to see things like persistence. So now it's not only does it infect your router, but after you reboot your router, it's still there.
Sure.
And it's not there to be a denial of service agent or mine cryptocurrency. It's there to steal information.
Sure.
And those are the new types of attacks we're seeing, using IoT as the tip of the spear to get in, and sophisticated capabilities to get data out. And that's where the real value is. So no, I mean, do hackers care about your refrigerator? No. Do some weirdos want to monitor your baby cam? Yeah, maybe. But that's not the real threat.
Yeah.
The real threat is the pivot. And the pivot is, okay, I'm in. Now I get to the soft, chewy center of the network. I'm inside this guy's network. Now what am I going to? I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I know. And I keep going back to this, but like I mentioned a few times already, I've spent some time kind of learning this stuff for the white hat side of things, just to be clear. And it's actually quite wild how easy it is to do, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you take our app and run it at your friend's house, you'd be surprised at how, especially if they're a civilian, right? They're not an IT guy.
Yeah.
What type of vulnerability you'll see. And whenever I go to a dinner party and Sonos isn't working right, I'm the guy who has to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's, my favorite question is, okay, where's the router? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay, we're really starting at a baseline here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know. So, wow. Keep going though.
So well, maybe we should update your software too. And so I am excited to be able to give away this consumer product because
Sure.
I think it will get mind share and get a lot of users. And I think it will also be a good part of the dialogue when I'm pitching a new concept of an IoT security product. I think selling to millennials, I bet they'll install the app while I'm on with them, and hopefully they'll run it at work and say, "Whoa, there's a lot of stuff here, like printers or copiers and coffee pots and all these things that are IoT connected." Keurig has an enterprise connected device now.
Wow.
Have they thought about security? I seriously doubt it.
Yeah.
Do we want to? We don't want to. Obviously, we don't want someone to brick the Keurig machine, but that would be bad.
Yeah.
However, it probably needs updates, and
Yeah.
so I think we found a good niche here. And there are other companies that have done this and been very successful. Tanium is a company that basically updates Windows and Linux computers, and it's got a $6.5 billion valuation. It's the most valuable private cybersecurity company out there. And I want to do the same thing. I want to patch things, not computers.
Sure.
And I want to do it because it's a hard problem. Patching computers it's already been done.
Yeah.
I like
fair.
blue sky. I like new ideas where there aren't competitors yet, I can have to invent new technologies. I don't want to follow somebody else's idea.
No, I totally get that. So I'm curious though to get your thoughts on the actual space. I've read stuff online that basically the cybersecurity industry is one of the few industries that basically has a zero unemployment rate, and it'll probably be like that for generations, or at least the next kind of handful of decades. That might be a little bit crazy, but what are your thoughts on that and the state of kind of the industry?
I use that same statistic all the time.
Okay, interesting.
I think there are a couple of so one stat that sticks in my mind. I think it was 2008.
Okay.
Cybercrime eclipsed the world narcotics trade in value.
Wow.
So for 10 years, cybercrime has been a bigger financial problem than drugs.
Wow.
Look at all
crazy,
the resources
right?
we throw. The resources we throw at the drug war. If we threw a fraction of those at cybersecurity, we'd probably be a bit further ahead. Bad guys make more money than good guys in cybersecurity. That's a problem. Not just in like individual salaries, but the overall cybersecurity industry in general generates less revenue than cybercriminals do.
Yeah, it's wild, right? But what's your thoughts on? I've heard that you can make just as much money, if not more, being a white hat in the cybersecurity space instead of kind of going black hat, where traditionally I think people made a lot more money. So in some cases, if you have to, some people just do what they have to do, right? For better or worse. It's just, but I think you can really make a really good living now being kind of one of the good guys. Have you thought, or do you agree with that?
Absolutely. No, I would not advocate signing up to be a cyber criminal. It's just unfortunate that we've got a crime where the upside is unlimited and the downside is pretty well bound. The odds are, if you live in certain countries, that you're not going to go to jail.
Sure.
That being the case, our adversaries, right, the cyber criminals, there are a lot of resources being spent to combat that. And so, and it is not too late in any career to pick up being a cybersecurity expert. One of my favorite sources for cybersecurity experts is coming out of the U.S. military. So enlisted folks were coming out of the military, coming out of their tour, because they have security drilled into them.
Yeah, interesting.
I love hiring veterans, and I think it's a great source for IT security, and it's had a great influence on our employment base. So vets are a great source for hiring, and I always encourage other startups to look there as well. There's a lot of training available, and one industry I really like that's really transforming emerging markets where people might have gone to the dark side is the concept of crowdsourced vulnerability research or crowdsourced bug hunting.
Interesting.
Like Bug Crowd, for example, it really was a game changer in this space where companies can put their software online and pay a bounty to whoever figures out how to hack it first.
Well, I think Google does that, right? And a bunch of other companies. Like if you hack into Chrome or Chromebook or something, you can make like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Fair?
You can make a living. The Pentagon does it now. So the Pentagon. So it was unthinkable 20 years ago to think you could get paid to hack the Pentagon, but they put their software online now before it goes to production. And I was at a conference in Singapore.
Okay.
And I kind of got there to speak at the speaking part, and I was there for the training part, and there were a lot of guys there from Indonesia and Malaysia, spending a lot of money to get trained on how to find web vulnerabilities. I said, why are you doing this? You know, just don't see the market where you are. They said, oh no, we want to win bug competitions. That's how we make a living.
Interesting.
Wow, it's just awesome that we have taken this problem and crowdsourced it and created jobs in parts of the world where really they couldn't get a job other than, you know, working in a call center maybe.
Sure.
So we can create these high value, highly skilled labor positions in emerging markets and really tap their talent to add to the cybersecurity solution and be part of the problem.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So for people that are maybe looking to get some training in the space, is there anything that you kind of recommend? In my opinion, there's a ton of free stuff even on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's free stuff online. I think there a couple of certifications.
Sure.
Security certification from Kali Linux.
Okay.
That's well recognized. CISSP is another well recognized one. You know, the kind of getting kind of less and more expensive. But the big conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON always have trainings. You know, those are some of the certifications that are well recognized. But a quick kind of search can find training and certification options that are in your price range.
Sure.
From free to as good as a college degree. And you know, open up that migration into this great field that pays well and is always challenging and interesting. But it's really one of the few jobs where you truly get to face something different every day.
Sure.
Even that the entry level position in the security operations center up to being a CEO, you know, it's always fresh and exciting. And I'm just feel very fortunate that my hobby is my career.
Sure. Well, and it's been like that for decades, right?
Yeah.
No, that's really great, man. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So do you want to close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys and where they can actually go download the apps and play with them?
We will make available access to the beta of the Phosphorus iOS and Android apps on phosphorus.io/future.
Okay.
You can sign up there, and we'll send you links for installation for our test flight version, our beta for iOS, or our a link to download our Android product before we go live in the stores. And that will allow you to scan your network, whether at home or at work, and determine if you've got vulnerabilities and fix them. And we'd love feedback from early users, and we'll make available the ability to submit new devices. We put the top couple hundred IoT devices in there, but we're always looking for crazy stuff we haven't seen before. You know, we're adding in devices from the healthcare industry and from the industrial control. But there's all kinds of you know, neat things you never think that are going online, and people are connecting to Raspberry Pis, et cetera.
Sure.
So we'd love feedback on that. Again, phosphorus.io/future.
Perfect, Chris. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.